Hello.
Hiya.
Welcome to Record Sports Hotline Live. Keith, how's it going?
Okay. We're very colourful today, aren't we?
Aye.
We brought the colour to the studio.
Summer is here.
Nice to see you coming to your work. That is always
Listen, I'm no hero.
a big bonus.
I'm no hero. I don't want to go on about it. We are obviously here at Record Sports Hotline Live HQ. We will hopefully be joined very soon by Andy Newport from Ibrox Stadium.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the wake of Rangers 4, Aberdeen now. Barry Ferguson has a home win as Rangers interim manager.
I think the phrase is get the monkey off the back, and that's what he's done there. I think it's been irritating him. Do you know what I've thoroughly enjoyed? And I'm not saying for a single second, by the way, that you should get the manager because you're good at doing press conferences. But I really enjoy his press conferences.
He talks really well.
He talks with an honesty. I think he's really authentic. And you could tell he was getting irritated the other day when people were saying, well, that's 7 games. And he felt inclined to point out, well, actually, he wasn't there for the first 2. And then 3 of the 5 were Fenerbahce, Bilbao and Celtic.
Pretty tough going.
Yeah, and I think he made a good... So, yes, he would have been desperate to scratch that itch, so to speak. And he did it in quite convincing fashion. That's the first time Rangers have had a clean sheet and donkeys. 4 goals scored in the second half. I think he'll be irritated, and you kind of got that from his after-match stuff. He was irritated that once again he had to go through people like a dose of salts at half-time. But do you know what? And I'll keep saying it because I really believe it. He is getting something out of these. I think they frustrate the life out of him, and I think he admits to that. But he is capable of getting something out of them that wasn't there before. Unfortunately for Barry Ferguson, it's coming in dribs and drabs and 45-minute bursts. He said afterwards he wants that second half performance replicated in the 2 games that he's got left between now and next weekend, when it's all done and dusted. Also, the really interesting bit, and again I think he speaks really well. He's not hiding the fact that he's really concerned now about what next season is going to look like. He's on the inside. He sees with his own eyes and has the relationship with these players, some of whom don't know if they're coming or going. And I think you can hear it in his voice. I think he's genuinely now concerned that Rangers are so far behind the 8 ball that it's going to be really difficult, whether it's him that's in charge of it or anybody else for that matter.
No matter who it is.
Yeah, Rangers really need, and they should listen to him, because see when he says, you need to make a decision, guys, he's absolutely spot on. They really do.
You might have seen Andy Newport pop up in your page there. We'll try and get him back. Whilst we're getting Andy on, shall we hear from Barry Ferguson? Here's some of his post-match comments. Here's what he had to say following today's win over Aberdeen.
Thoroughly deserved 3 points. First half, I wasn't too happy. I thought we were a bit pedestrian on the ball. Aberdeen never threatened us. So, I was a bit frustrated. Half time, I made a change. I wanted a few more runners to midfield to give Aberdeen some problems, and then when we done that, we caused them all sorts of problems. And I thought, in the end, we ran over the top of Aberdeen. Just disappointed that it was only 4. I thought it could have been more. But look, it's been far too long, 7 games without a win. Just happy to get that victory final.
What does it mean to you to get that win?
I'm happy. Of course I'm happy. The players are happy, and hopefully the supporters are happy with the second half performance.
Did you see in that second half, Barry, what this team can be like when it sort of clicks almost?
Yeah, and I see when they listen as well. They can be a good team. As I said, come back for the game last Sunday. Their commitment and attitude's always been really good for me. I can never label that against them. It's just equality at times. So we worked really hard during the week on things that we can get better at. And it was just nice to see things happen when you work with things on the training ground. But I had to remember them at half time. We need to be better, guys. We need to threaten Aberdeen. And once we got that first goal, I felt there was a calmness about us, and we started to play the way that I know the boys can.
We're joined now from Ibrox by the one and only Andy Newport. Andy, how's it going?
Very well, boys, very well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us as usual. We just started talking about the game today. Barry Ferguson has a victory at Ibrox, finally.
At long last, yeah. It's been a while. 98 days, I think it was, since Rangers last won here. Obviously,
That's mad.
7 games without a win, 5 of them under Barry Ferguson. So it's been a long time coming for him. But he was certainly pleased with his team's performance, especially that second half. First half was really more of the same, more of the sort of laboured sort of stuff we'd seen from this team for a long while. But the second half was a vast improvement, and as Barry Ferguson says, they sort of ran over the top of Aberdeen in that second half.
I think the interesting thing, Andy, and everybody's been making this point and banging on, and quite rightly so, because it's an unacceptable run of results that Rangers have had at Ibrox. Barry Ferguson didn't look to me like a man that was breaking out the bunting because he got a win against Aberdeen. And I think that's actually quite a strong message that he's sending it. You know, if people were expecting him to be, high-fiving his staff and, taking a lap of honour because he won a game of football at Ibrox, that's not the case. He's got bigger and better ideas. Whether or not he actually gets to put them into practice remains to be seen. But I thought that was interesting, because if he was purely in it just for the short haul, then I think there might have been a bigger reaction to the fact that he finally got a win at Ibrox today.
Aye.
But he looks like a man that his head was still full of business.
Listen, I think Barry Ferguson's been here long enough. He's won enough things here to realise that one victory isn't enough to be satisfied as Rangers manager. You have to be winning week after week, and you have to be picking up trophies. This Rangers team have not been so far off Celtic's level. Consistency, yeah, they can match them one-off games, but in terms of that consistency week in, week out, so yeah, listen, he gets a win today, but he was the first one. He walked straight into that press room today and admitted, yes, it's not been good enough, and it's been far too long for the punters here to be getting treated to a victory. It's just, as I say, was it 98 days? It's just been, who could ever have foreseen that? I think previously the worst ever run of results in terms of Rangers playing at home had been 3 straight defeats, so for them to go 7 games without a win is unheard of and unparalleled. So he'll just, I think more than anything, he'll just be relieved that it's over, and then they can start sort of looking ahead, obviously to the summer. And from his point of view, he'll be hoping to be involved. But as I say, we're still waiting for news on that front.
Well, I mean, on that, do either of you guys retain any beliefs that he might stay on next season, Barry Ferguson?
I think, and we've talked about this, Daniel, I think there's been a kind of shift in the mood music around Barry Ferguson since he's had his face-to-face, I think, really lengthy, full and frank discussions with Kevin Thelwell. I think that conversation probably went really well, because from Barry Ferguson's view, because he's been a little bit more bullish since then. And he has, and I think he's quite right to get on the front foot and say, look, guys, whether it's me, whether it's not me, make a decision, because something needs to get done.
Aye.
And you look at Andy, and I was watching on the TV, it looked to me as if there was big holes all over the Ibrox home support today. So you can tell that the fans that have paid for their tickets, they're paying not to go and watch that team now. Mm-hmm. That's a worry. And it really, and I know that everybody's now put the kettle on for the summer and the American takeover. But the fact of the matter is that Rangers really need to start putting their building blocks down. They should have been doing it weeks ago. They're weeks and weeks and weeks, perhaps months late already. I just, whether or not Barry Ferguson gets it, I think he's absolutely correct in saying, do you know what, guys, you can't afford to sit around twiddling your thumbs. There needs to be action. Yeah.
Some comments coming in, Andy. Let me throw these at you. You're low him up. It says Barry's been a good addition to get more out of the players, but we need experience. This one from Craig as well says, I appreciate Barry's efforts. Some brilliant memories knocking out the special one, but we need a completely new start with a new man, and we need it now. The latest name is Davide Ancelotti, who's been linked with Rangers today.
David.
Is it David or Davide? Oh.
Davide.
He's been linked. He's obviously his father's understudy, his assistant. He's been obviously seen there at Napoli, at Real Madrid. I mean, Andy, do you think there's any chance that Ferguson will still be there next season?
As I said, I always thought, I think I've said consistently, I think he had to do something special. I think the telling thing was last week, as Keith says, he points out, he came out with this bullish statement urging the the new owners to make a decision quick. I think if it was going to be him, I think he would have been told by now. I think, as Keith points out, that there's so little time left before the new season. I think if they had any indication it was going to be him, in fairness to him, I think they would have told him by now so he can start these plans. And I spoke to him on Friday asking, has he been involved in any discussions as to new signings, even if he's not going to be the man playing them? Has he been asked to weigh in and what sort of players, what sort of characters they should be signing? And he didn't give any sort of indication he had been. So I just think, what is it? I mean, I think it's 71 days as of tomorrow, so 72 days today until they play their first Champions League qualifier. I think it was going to be him. Just out of sheer fairness to him, they would have had to have told him by now, because otherwise, as you say, Keith, they're heading in with in the summer one hand tied behind your back. I mean, Celtic must have been doing their preparation for the new season, as you say, for months. They'll have started this, had an eye on it in January. They'll have been doing all their scouting work, getting their ducks in a row. I mean, listen, I'm absolutely certain Rangers have plans in place, and there'll be action, even perhaps without the takeover being complete. The current board will be acting under instruction from the new owners, knowing that it's going to go ahead. It's just a matter of getting through the final paperwork. But I think, in fairness, if it was going to be Barry Ferguson, if you really thought he was going to be the guy to do it, they'd have told him by now and allow him to get on with the job. So the fact that they haven't done that just leads me to think that it's not going to be him. Just, listen, I think we also know that the Rangers' run of form hasn't been anywhere near good enough, and I don't think we've seen enough signs from Barry that things have improved drastically enough for him to be considered. So, but I think he's absolutely right to be urging the board the new regime to get a move on, just to give some clarity. I think the fans need it as well, as you say. Even though I've been saying for a few weeks that this is only shown town that it's given them any kind of hope for the new season, because if it wasn't for this takeover, you'd be heading into another really bleak, close season with Celtic potentially winning a treble and just nothing for the Rangers support to get excited about. But again, here you are with, the team that's on the pitch right now is a mile off it. You think there may be a wee buzz around the place just because of the takeover coming, but there's been so few details come out. I think it's still too early for the fans to even get that real excitement going for the new campaign. I think they need to see something more than just a sporting director getting announced. They need to see some proper signs of who the new manager's going to be. They need to start hearing some names coming about in terms of the signings for the summer before they can get that buzz back. And right now, I think they're just a wee bit in limbo land, or a wee bit in purgatory, if you want to use that phrase, just waiting for things just to start getting going. Once that happens, they can start feeling the excitement, the energy back around the place. But right now, it's just a bit of a lull.
That's what makes me think, Andy. You're making the assumption that by not telling Barry Ferguson they do have a plan, they've got something else in mind. That's an assumption that I'm not prepared to make with this Rangers set, because we have nothing to judge them on in terms of their previous, the new American owners. There's no measuring stick. What do we expect? Are they commercially minded? Are they just solely focused on trying to get the business deal over the line and get it done? And then they'll take a look and they'll go to Kevin Thelwell. What's Kevin Thelwell's doing? They have had a conversation, him and Barry Ferguson, but by not saying that it's your job, he hasn't said to him that it's somebody else's either. I think we could be making a bit of an assumption here that Rangers are further down the line with things than they actually are. I think everything's up in the air. Bear in mind that Kevin Thelwell is still employed by Everton. He's not even in the door.
No.
So yeah, I think, Andy, you might like to think that Rangers have got their ducks in a row and they know exactly what they're going to do this summer. I'm seeing no indication that that's the case. And the longer it goes on, I think the more opportunity, funnily enough, that it might be that they turn around and say to Barry Ferguson, listen, we're miles behind. No. We've got all this to sort out. You're in the door. You've made assessments in these players. Would you take a 1 year rolling contract? That might be the simplest solution to the whole thing. I wouldn't rule that out just yet.
No, I agree as well. I don't think I wouldn't rule it out at all.
I'm not really anything about it, Keith, but I just think on the basis that the new board, the new regime were heavily consulted in terms of the Thelwell appointment, then you'd have to think that they're going to be heavily consulted on the new manager. And yeah, you're right. Of
course.
But I just think because of everyone I've spoken to around this subject says that it's getting done. It's just a matter of getting through the legalities, and that's everybody who's ever bought a house will know how time-consuming that can be and how long that takes to play out. So you can only imagine with the number of complexities around this deal, that's the reason for the length of time it's taking. But I think it would be folly for them to go into a season, potentially getting the keys to the club a matter of days before the team is due to report for pre-season, and not have a manager in place or a list of signing targets ready to press the button on. So, yeah, that's okay. You're saying we're making assumptions. Yeah, I am. But personally, if those assumptions aren't true, then Rangers are going to be in equally as big a mess going into this new season as they were 12 months ago when things were pretty similar. So, I mean, listen, if they repeat the mistakes of last summer, then they are. That's not the best of footing, and you would imagine that the people currently in charge would have warned them against the risks of doing so in terms of their relationship with the Rangers support.
Are you giving much credence to the Ancelotti thing?
Big Dave, is that what we're calling him?
Big Davey.
Dave. Who knows? I mean, there's been a million names bandied about so far. Nobody's saying much. So, tried to speak with the club on Friday night when the Steven Gerrard rumours came out, story came out, tried to speak to people in America from the 49ers side. They're not saying much, so listen, I think the fact there's no real strong one candidate is sort of emerged from the pack right now tells you that maybe you're right, Keith, in that sense. Maybe it's not as finalised as we all think, but Ancelotti, I don't know. I think, again, I'm wary of these guys that have never had a track record of being a manager. Yes, his dad's great. His dad's the best in the business, but how much does the old Dave have to do with that? I'm not so sure.
Before we let you go, Andy, Anthony is an Aberdeen fan, and he says, I'm genuinely terrified at what might happen to us in the cup final. That second half display was absolutely woeful and embarrassing. Some players are clearly on the beach already. I mean, if you are an Aberdeen fan, that second 45 minutes was wild how bad it was.
I was shocked at their whole approach today. Given you looked at the way Motherwell, St Mirren, Hibs have all come here and had to go at this Rangers team, knowing that they can be vulnerable, knowing that they can be got at. That if you get your noses in front, then the crowd here can get right on top of Rangers and can have such almost a toxic effect on the team that they didn't come out and have a right proper go. They had a couple of chances. Keskinen, early doors. Obviously, they had the goal chalked off just before half time, but second half they were a mile off it, and they just seemed to crumble as soon as the first goal went in. Jimmy Tilleen's just in the press conference talking about them sort of playing as individuals as soon as they went one down, and that's the kind of the way that they went. They were going in ones and twos rather than the sort of organised way that they've been performing for most of the season. So I think Aberdeen, listen, it's the end of the season, it's been a long, hard season, ups and downs for Aberdeen. And perhaps, there is a case that they've got one eye at Hampden in a couple of weeks, but I mean, you're still third place to be going for. I mean, they could still, be catching Hibs. Hibs are obviously both teams still got to play Celtic. Celtic, I think, host Hibs in midweek. Is that right?
They played Hibs yesterday.
Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. So, it's Aberdeen and play Celtic in the final day. Is that right? So,
aye, that's right. Aberdeen Celtic Wednesday.
Listen, so it's it's far from certain what will happen, but I think if they got a result today, they could have been level with Hibs and it would be game on going into the final two games of the season. So I'm just surprised at the way they approached this. I really was.
By the sounds of it, Andy, the big Ibrox rebuild has already started.
That's just the bell tolling for me, I think.
See, before you go, about the rebuild. About the rebuild, Andy. One player again caught the eye today, Czerny, and he spoke to Sky Sports after the game, and he actually sounded a little bit, flummoxed with the whole. And again, it feeds into this kind of narrative that we're talking about. Barry Ferguson said things need to get done, action needs to start happening. Valkar Czerny looks to me like a player who I think would happily commit to Rangers. But Rangers don't seem to be in a position to commit to him. That remains the same, Andy, yeah?
As far as I'm aware, yeah. I mean, as far as I know, Valkar Czerny has plans to leave the city as of the 18th of May. I think he'll be off and away. End of the day, Rangers need to be able to come up with several million pounds if they want to sign him. And you know, again, we're still waiting for news on what kind of sums are going to be available to whoever's the manager next year. I think you only have to look at Leeds to take a kind of indicative sign of what way the new owners will approach it. Leeds sold £160 million worth of talent last year and only spent 30. So I don't think they're coming up here to spend oodles or noodles of money. They're going to have to wait. Obviously, splash out a huge sum of money just to get hold of the club. Only a portion of that will be going into the club in terms of they're going to have to buy off John Bennett's shares. Money goes to John Bennett. They're going to have to buy off Dave King's shares. Money goes to Dave King. I think Barry Scott, I think he's getting bought out as well. And then the rest of them, portions of shares, and then there's a share issue to dilute the rest of them down and take the Andrew Kavanagh and the 49ers to 51%, and only that money will be going into the club in terms of a cash injection. So there's not going to be oodles to spend. They're already committed, as we know, to £4.5 million on Oscar Cortez. I think this will be more another summer of really wheeling and dealing, perhaps a few free transfers, some Bosmans, some loans. There'll be improvements, there'll be some money to spend, yes, but not. This is not, Man City money that they're going to have to play with. This is going to be, they're going to, the emphasis will be doing on things properly and making the right signings at the right time, and trying to avoid the mistakes that I've got Rangers in the position they're in right now.
Andy, thanks so much as ever for joining us on the Hotline Live with Record Sport.
Cheers, Andy.
Safe journey home.
Thanks, lads.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers. And just to round up, Keith, on Rangers, a couple more comments for you because plenty coming in thick and fast. And if you want to get involved, please do so in the comment section below. Rangers Easy OK says, the problem is, Keith, with giving it Fergus short term, he obviously isn't thinking long term with some of his selections. Why would he? The likes of Rice, Igaman, Curtis, Danilo, and Seala should all be getting minutes in these glorified friendlies we're playing. He absolutely slaughtered Cortez in his presser, which doesn't sound good. £4.5 million completely down the drain by the sounds of it. He then later on, if I can find the comment, goes on to say there is no way that Barry should be getting the job permanently. He's won 5 games in 13. So what do you make of that?
Yeah, and I hear it, and I've said myself that I find this a really curious position to be in. I'm the first one that would normally look at results and say, that's the metric by which you gauge the success or otherwise of any manager. Mm-hmm. And you can't point to Barry Ferguson's results and say give him the job on the basis of the results that he's had. You absolutely can't. But I did kind of really quickly reach the conclusion here that this is a unique set of circumstances and that you can't legitimately have an opinion or make an assessment on Barry Ferguson and his coaching staff and the impact they've made in terms of results because they're working with a group of players that just can't be trusted to go to their work.
Yeah.
So if you can't use results as the metric, you need to try and use something else. And I've said, I've made the argument, you need to look with your own eyes and make an assessment. Do you think that they know what they're doing? Because some people will say he's got no experience, therefore no. Do you think you know they know what they're doing, and do you think they are capable of driving Rangers in the direction that Rangers need to be driven? Mm-hmm. And I'm basing my opinion around it on that I think they've got the right guys, and I think it's essential. And we've spoken about the importance of this at Celtic. This culture that Celtic have got that's ingrained and it's in the system. Mm-hmm. It's people who live and breathe the club, and they're all around Lennoxtown.
Everywhere you look,
they're all around Lennoxtown. Be that as players, you get James Forrest with the biggest collection of medals in Scottish football history. You get Cal McGregor. You've got everywhere you look at Celtic, there are these links to what the club's supposed to look like and what it's supposed to feel like, and the level of desire and intensity and all these sort of buzzwords that you need to have as sort of factored in throughout your whole football club. These are minimum requirements. Rangers don't have any of that. The only guys inside that building right now that are a link or a bridge to what Rangers used to look like are Barry Ferguson and his coaching staff.
Coaching team,
and one of the problems that Rangers have had recruitment-wise, they keep, and they've made the same mistakes, and it's guys. So we've talked about this before. If you don't know what it is that determines you know, the X factor for a player who's got the right character and all the attributes that are required to live in this environment and thrive in it. If you don't know what it is that you're looking for, then how can you find it?
Aye.
Rangers have got a squad full of players that have been picked by a recruitment process which doesn't understand what it's meant to be achieving.
Aye. A lot of players that are talented, but clearly
Barry
are just
Ferguson
not-
said it from day one.
Aye.
It's not good enough to be a talented football player.
Aye.
You won't make it at Rangers on talent alone. You need that extra thing, whatever that extra thing is.
Aye.
But he understands what it is.
Aye.
But the recruitment people don't. And they've got a squad full of players that don't really understand what Rangers are all about. They'll have their eyes open. You saw Cyril Dessers talking about after the Old Firm game that Barry always speaks very passionately, but he was particularly passionate in his pre-match. You can almost see these guys going, well, wow, what's... they have no...
It's so alien to them.
It's alien to them. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That culture is just built in to Celtic and has been built in, forged into the place over the last 2 decades.
Aye.
At Rangers, there is zero.
It's just the standard at Celtic, as you said. Aye.
Yeah.
There's still a little bit of support for Barry Ferguson in the comments. Johnny says the man's a legend. This club needs his drive going forward. So we've talked about it a lot. I guess time will tell.
Yeah.
One manager.
I think we'll find out sooner rather than later. Now, bear in mind that there only is 1 week to go.
Exactly. It kind of has to happen soon. One manager whose future is also undecided, it seems, is Derek McInnes. Massive win for him and Kelly yesterday. 3-2 against Dundee. Basically means that Kelly are safe.
Yeah, they are safe.
Literally safe. But of course, the links with Hearts just won't go away.
No.
He was on the TV today as a pundit, which, by the way, I think is always kind of weird. Do you not think? Like Rangers Aberdeen, the Kelly manager's a pundit.
Yeah.
It's just a bit...
I know what you mean.
It's a bit odd.
But I mean, we've actually got players now that are playing on a
current
Saturday and
players,
punditing through the week. So.
But anyway, he said on Sky today that there'd be no contact. Then he sort of said, I've heard there might be contact, but nothing official.
Yeah, wasn't very convincing, was it?
I was going to say, he's certainly not coming out and saying, I'm going nowhere.
No. And nor will he. Because he wants the Hearts job. So, I mean, that's going to be, in theory, he wants the Hearts job.
Aye.
And he's looked at the Hearts job for many a long year, Derek McInnes, and thought, what an opportunity somebody could get. If you got in the door at Hearts, what an opportunity you'd have.
Potentially.
Because of the fan base, because of the size of the club. You know, and I think you would argue Hearts are a bigger club than Aberdeen. I would make that argument.
Aye, I think that's reasonable.
And look what he did at Aberdeen. And I think he looks upon Hearts as an opportunity to have a dynasty, a bit of an era. You know, to go there over a similar period of time as he enjoyed at Pittodrie, and to really build something significant and to consistently get them punching at least the minimum requirement of their own weight, i.e. finishing third. So I am sure that the idea excites Derek McInnes. Absolutely positive about that. What I would say is, you know, I'm not for a single second am I suggesting that he'll be holding a grudge because he was overlooked last time. But as I said, Jackotown Analytics had drilled into the data and come up with that. It was the only obvious answer to the situation back in October. And Hearts went another way. They fed into their computer programming and they came out with Neil Critchley. And that was a shambolic mistake.
Aye.
And unfortunately for Hearts, it's the latest in a line of shambolic mistakes. And here's where it gets interesting. Because Derek McInnes will have to assess, if Hearts pick up the phone to Kilmarnock over the next 24 hours, and I strongly suspect that they will, at some point, Derek McInnes has to sit down and then he has to make an assessment of his own in terms of, can I work with these people? Are these people dependable? Can I trust them? And do I think that I'll be given the best chance of being a success working with them? Because see if he feels that that might be an issue and that they never really trusted him in the first place when they gave it to Critchley, then maybe the answer isn't just as cut and dried as everybody would imagine.
Aye.
Let's not forget, this is the same Derek McInnes who was offered the Rangers job. And at the 11th hour, following a telephone conversation with Dave King, he got the fear because he knew that Dave King didn't really want him. And he felt he couldn't trust him. And he felt his chances of becoming a successful Rangers manager were almost going to be strangled at birth because he knew he felt right away that he wasn't going to have a relationship with Dave King. And that's why he chose to stay at Aberdeen. Now, if Derek McInnes can turn down the Rangers job, well, I take that back. He didn't turn down the Rangers job. He turned down Dave King. But if he can walk away from an opportunity like that, and bear in mind, Rangers has always been his club, then, you know, I think Hearts might have more of a job in their hands than they understand at this point, making sure that they make him feel comfortable and wanted, and that he feels that they will give him the optimum chance of doing what he has in mind for Hearts.
Aye.
And then you have to factor in Tony Bloom. It was Tony Bloom's algorithms which came up with Critchley. Now, there's part of the Tony Bloom involvement, which I'm sure would really excite any manager, Derek McInnes included.
Just look at Brighton.
A £10 million investment, the opportunity to access Brighton's database, and you know the way that they buy players. There's so much to be excited about, you know. And if you walk in to a club, Derek had 8 years at Pittodrie. I don't think at any one point in that period was he cash rich in terms of, look, there's a serious, significant sum of money to go and spend in the transfer market.
Yeah,
he would have loved that, and he'll love the idea, I'm sure, of unlocking a sort of treasure trove like that on day one at Tynecastle. But again, will he want to speak to Tony Bloom? You know, if he felt that Tony Bloom was partly, or Jamestown Analytics was partly the reason that he was overlooked in October, is there a trust issue there? All these things will need to be ironed out. Listen, what do I think? I think that he'll get offered the job, and I think he'll accept the job. But somewhere in the middle, there's some calculations to be done.
Still some
and
caveats.
It's just not as cut and dried, I don't think, as perhaps some people might imagine.
Mark in the comment section says Derek McInnes looks like he's taking Kelly as far as he can. Hearts with investors will be good for him. Marzuno, I have to say, I kind of agree with this. He says, seems like McInnes was fluttering his eyelashes at Hearts to me. And I kind of agree with that, to be honest.
Not unsolicited, I would imagine.
Aye, very good point. Aye, very good point.
I think there's a lot of fluttering going on.
Back and forth. Aye.
A bit of footsie with Anne Budge.
Now, there's an image.
Christ.
We elsewhere yesterday, we should probably mention Celtic. Obviously, you know, the league's won. They're preparing for the Scottish Cup final. And they were obviously behind against Hibs yesterday, Martin Boyle. But they came back, and particularly in the second half, were really
emphatic,
imperious. And I thought the one thing that I would point out that I thought was interesting about the Celtic display, there seemed to be a bit of fire there. You saw there was a couple of scuffles with Nicholas Kuhn, with Adam Ida, and I think Brendan Rodgers has got them to a place where they're definitely not petering out.
No, and look, do you know what they're doing? They're ticking off Brendan's performance boxes one by one. He did say he was going to go into these final 5 games of the season, setting little targets, and he's got them. You know, you can tell there's a fire there. You can tell that they've not, you know, it's not flip-flops time yet. They've got a cup final to prepare for. You get guys like Nicholas Kuhn, by the way, who's got to really throw down the gauntlet in terms of, I want a start in the cup final. Because
it's not guaranteed.
It's not guaranteed. And when you've got James Forrest, who is a consistent 8 out of 10 player, perhaps sometimes better, but very rarely lower than that, James Forrest. And he's fit, and he's firing, and he's looking hungry. These are decisions that, you know, that's why Brendan gets paid the big bucks, of course. But decisions nonetheless. So yeah, you know, and Kuhn will be delighted that, you know, he on the score sheet he looked a bit more like himself. But there is genuine competition there. There's not many places you would say that about throughout the starting 11. Obviously, Kasper Schmeichel coming back from injuries, massive, because you know, and I think he's made a brilliant save from Martin Boyle before the Hibs opening goal. Just typical Schmeichel. So that's big. All over the pitch, you think there's probably about 8-9 places that are pretty much guaranteed. And there's maybe one, two, maybe 3 at most places up for grabs. So the guys that are got those question marks hanging over them, they're the ones that will have real fire. But Brendan Rodgers is really expert in giving, setting little kind of targets to keep motivation levels as they should be. You know, he's spoken, and he obviously opened fire in his dressing room after the St Johnstone game that's just not going to cut it here. Actually started, kind of almost issuing threats in terms of what he plans to do this summer, if that's what the attitude is. So he's constantly challenging his players. He's constantly keeping them on their toes. That was a really resounding way, because Hibs have been superb.
Form team in the country.
So that was a great result, a good performance, and there is that fire there, and that's going to be essential. And I'm with the Aberdeen fan that's already terrified about what might be awaiting for them at Hampden this.
I mean, that Aberdeen today
this month
was wild.
No, I think Celtic. I mean, we've seen what Celtic did to Aberdeen the last time the pair met at Hampden, and I think it could be something very similar in store.
Aye, Hoopsaholic says the goal number 3 yesterday was a thing of beauty, and I wanted to touch on this because Rio Hatate, there was kind of a few social media rumours that he could be even signing a new contract at Celtic. Now, I know social media is not the be-all and end-all. I'm not putting much stock in that, but I rate Hatate so highly.
Yeah.
And it feels like
Quality player.
Rodgers has got him a lot more consistent this season. And I think if he can be persuaded to stay next season, which I don't think is guaranteed, that could be huge for Celtic. It's similar to Maeda, but I think
you're going to have to brace yourself for bad news on that front.
You think Hatate will go? Really?
And I think he's been making the noises, and I think people in at Celtic know that he's been I'm not going to say agitating, because I don't think he's been rocking any boats.
Aye.
But I think that it's fairly well established, well known behind the scenes at Celtic that there's a touch of the Kyogo Furuhashis. Where
that's what I thought up until recently. But
so I think that's one reason why one of the kind of priority targets for Brendan Rodgers this summer will be a central midfield player. I don't think Celtic will want to lose Hatate, but I think that he feels the time is right to make a move, and I think he'll probably be looking at hoping at getting into one of Europe's top leagues, and he's just not going to get. He'll get the opportunity to play Champions League at Celtic, but I think he's striving for something more than that. However, he maybe if he's picked up the phone to his wee mate Kyogo, he might be learning that
grass
ain't always greener.
Kaiser says, I think pushed by the national team manager of Japan, Hatate and Maeda are off. Hoopsaholic agrees with Yuki, says the time is right to sell Hatate. Mark says Hatate is the most naturally gifted player since Lubomir Moravchik. That's a big call, but I do rate him very highly.
Player. He's a gifted player.
Elsewhere, before we finish, on Saturday, Kyle Gunn writes in, friend of the show. Kyle, how's it going? He says, excellent performance from St Mirren yesterday. Wouldn't rule out a second European season in a row. I mean, big win at Tannadice for St Mirren, 2-0.
That's a shock, Kyle, what to talk about St Mirren.
I know.
No, but by the way, he makes a very good point, and he's absolutely right. I tell you something, St Mirren, the momentum that they have built, you just won't be surprised if they did manage to topple United. I thought that St Mirren, I have to be honest, once they got the top 6 and they celebrated it, I thought, wow, that's it, job done. Far from it. And I talk about managers that managed to keep their players motivated. Stephen Robinson's done a ridiculously consistent job, consistently punching well above St Mirren's weight. 3 consecutive top 6 finishes.
Remarkable.
Chance of European football. It is remarkable. And unfortunately for St Mirren, that sort of stuff doesn't go unnoticed. I'm hearing that there's already a couple of clubs down south that are showing significant interest in Stephen Robinson, and why wouldn't they?
No offence to St Mirren, but I'm surprised he's stayed there that long. In the sense that another club hasn't come along.
I think he's thoroughly enjoyed it. I think they've been a great fit for one another. But you do get the feeling. And by the way, talking about Derek McInnes, the West Brom job is still available.
Former West Brom captain, of course.
He's a big hero with the West Brom fans. I think he skippered them to promotion.
Aye.
And they hold him in really high regard down there.
Mm-hmm.
And there has been, 1 or 2 rumours suggesting that maybe that they're looking north of the border. So there's a lot. We talk about the situation at Rangers, which is just, wide open in terms of everything that needs to get done, from appointing a manager, trying to sign players, so much work to do.
Yeah.
So you've got that issue. You've got, over the coming couple of days, you would imagine Derek McInnes' situation will develop one way or the other. You've got Stephen Robinson. What does St Mirren do? There's so much
still at play, kind
of going into this summer. So many things. The one place you would look at, you say, well, Celtic are fine. They'll just keep ticking along.
I know.
But even then, Brendan Rodgers will be targeting at least 3 or 4 players in the transfer window. And as we've discussed previously, that's going to be fascinating. Does Celtic take the old scattergun back out the cabinet and revert to their old policies, old strategies in the transfer market, or does Brendan Rodgers get to keep a firm focus on a little bit more refined and targeted transfers, which would come at a premium? So loads and loads to look forward to over the summer.
And just before we finish, we have to mention St Johnstone. We don't mention them a lot on Hotline Live, but I think it's safe to say we thought they were dead and buried. They were gone.
Yeah.
Huge win over Ross County yesterday. Huge win. And Ross County now, 5 games. I think they've only scored something like 3 goals.
Yeah, they're getting a bit of trouble, aren't they?
Aye.
Yeah, I don't fancy St Johnstone's chances, I'll have to be honest.
Aye.
They've left it way too late. They continue to sit bottom of the table, and they look to me like lightweight. I don't trust them. I don't trust them, and I might be entirely wrong. And that was a big result for them yesterday, no doubt about it. But it almost feels as if it's now that the pressure's off, that they've accepted their fate. Maybe not.
3 points off safety.
Yeah. So I mean, it's given them something to fight for. But if they don't win midweek, that's it. It's finished.
Aye, that's it done now. I guess time will tell. Thank you so much for all the comments you've sent in, as ever, on the Hotline Live. We really appreciate it. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow, Keith.
Okie dokie.
Can't wait already. Thank you very much for watching.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.